So the show that Joe Biden watches and likes the most is Morning Joe. And he actually calls Joe Scarborough for advice. I know. It's an absolutely terrifying notion. Well, Biden also likes Fareed Zakaria, but Fareed Zakaria recently broke with him on the issue of Israel and really went after him and called him, hapless and ineffective and immoral for his policy towards Netanyahu. So my guess is Biden's going to run into the loving arms of Morning Joe and MSNBC to try to see who's defending him and how vociferously they are doing so. So I want to show you this clip here. This is Donnie Deutsch on MSNBC, Morning Joe, basically giving Biden and the Democrats, giving them some advice on how to run their campaign.
He wanted the Pentagon to build cages. There were cages at the border. And the Pentagon resisted, and it didn't happen. But that's what he wanted in the second term. He'd figure out how to make that a reality. He wanted Andrew McCabe and Jim Comey and Pete Strzok and Lisa Page prosecuted in the second term. There's nothing to say that Bill Barr stood on the line there. And that felt precarious. There would be no Bill Barrs in a second term Justice Department. And, our mutual friend Michael Cohen did go to jail. I mean, then
and he's afraid he's going to go to jail again.
Right.
They'll come after him again. I mean, by the way, I'm afraid. I've been one of the most outspoken guys. It's interesting. Somebody said to me, are you afraid if he gets reelected? And I hadn't thought about it. And he's going to come after Joe. He's going to come after me. He might come after you. I mean, this is what people are not comprehending.
Okay. That's a little paranoid. I agree that Trump is an authoritarian. I agree he's going to go on a revenge tour for sure. But you're a lower level target. Right? I mean, if he had to go after everybody in the media who goes after him, he'd have to go after literally the entire media, right? So, minus Fox, Sean Hannity, Newsmax, One American News, but literally everybody else. So, I don't know. He's being melodramatic, and this is a very arrogant, self-centered, paranoid type rant.
There are 4 people that need to step forward: Kelly, Mattis, McMaster, and Milley. And there needs to be a general campaign where these generals who have worked with him need to turn to the American public and turn to camera and say, you don't understand how scary this can be. We really can go over a cliff here. These people, patriots, need to start to stand up because that's what America listens to.
The problem with that is, I'm not saying it's wrong to do that, to get the generals who served under Trump to come out and say, this guy's an authoritarian, we can't allow it. I'm not saying that's wrong. But what I am saying is, he's a little naive to think that's a debate ender. Because Trump just gets to turn around and say, I told you guys I'm going after the deep state, the corrupt deep state, and now they're coming after me. Look, proof, the generals. They're coming after me. That's the corrupt deep state. He can spin it as, I told you I'm anti-establishment, and the reason why they're coming after me is because I'm against all these stupid wars and they're in favor of them. They don't want me exposing their crimes and their corruption. So, it's not as much of a debate ender as you think it is. This is what we've seen with Trump. Anything you think is a debate ender, it's not a debate ender. He just jujitsus his way out of it a lot of the time, right? Now, I think a lot of the criminal charges are harder to jujitsu out of, and he's been found liable for fraud, tax fraud, business fraud, insurance fraud, the stuff with E.G. and Carroll, etc. There's a lot more charges coming. So he's not Teflon, but a lot of this stuff politically, he does know how to weasel his way out of.
Immigration, it will even get worse as it did the first time with Donald Trump. Our democracy is really, really, really online here. And our way of life will change. Get people, scare the shit out of people.
So that's the big advice for Joe Biden and the Democrats. Scare the shit out of people. This is the kind of campaign advice he's getting from MSNBC, from Morning Joe, his favorite show. Donnie, I got news for you. They didn't need your advice to do this. Now, by the way, as we discussed earlier, Biden is a contradiction machine, and he's mangling his own message. Because on the one hand, he says exactly what you want him to say, beyond the pale, authoritarian, wants to be a dictator, inexcusable, can never have power again, this is un-American. He says all that stuff, but then in the next breath, he gives a speech at the southern border and begs Trump to work with him. Said, in a bipartisan fashion, we must work together to solve this problem. You can't say he's a tyrant, he's a dictator, he's beyond the pale, and also let me normalize him and work with him like he's reasonable and should be involved in the conversation and the discussion. Total contradiction. But look, the overarching point is this. Of course, this is the advice MSNBC is going to give Biden, and of course, this is probably going to be what they settle on. But they're missing the majority of how they should run. They're missing the majority. Yes, thing number one is my opponent is terrible. Let me explain how. Beyond the pale, authoritarian, all that stuff. And it's true when it comes to Trump. Yes, that's one thing. But then you also have to do the classic, I'm awesome, here's what I've done. CHIPS Act, PACT Act, brought 800,000 manufacturing jobs back, taxing the corporations a minimum of 15%, $1,400 stimulus checks pulled out of Afghanistan, whatever, list goes on. And then the third thing, the most important thing, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do paid family leave. I'm going to expand Medicare or do a public option. You have to have things that people can point to and look forward to and say, yes, I want that. And they're doing none of the, hey, here's my record and what I've done. And they're doing none of the, hey, here's what I'm going to do. It's just, my opponent is bad, but also let's work with him because we need bipartisanship. What? And again, we all know the elephant in the room. Never going to win. You're never going to win if you keep arming and funding a genocide. Duh. And we shouldn't even be having this conversation around electoral politics, right? And campaigning and the horse race. This is really a moral and ethical conversation. It is unfathomable that we are paying for the carpet bombing of children. But if we are going to have that political conversation, well, that's the elephant in the room. And you're never going to hear that, ever, on MSNBC. They're going to say stuff like, scare the shit out of the American public. Well, after a while, that trick stops working. And these guys still haven't learned that yet. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.